morning, friends, and welcome back. I thought I would show you how to take one of these paper mache figures that you can get from the craft stores and decoupage it so that it can look like this. And as you can see, I have it in back of the Christmas tree because I wanted you to see how different colored lights can really bring out the sparkle to this. And I used several different glitters, several different colors, different sizes, and I'll show you how I got this done. There is some construction being done outside. I have no idea what it is, but it's pretty noisy out there, and it's also very windy. So if you pick up any static or noise in the background, I'm sorry about that, but I gotta get this video done. So the first thing I did was I just painted this with Martha Stewart white, I think it's called White Wedding chalk paint or chalk finish paint. You can use acrylic paint on this. The idea is you just want to make sure that it's a lighter color going underneath your tissue paper. So once I covered this whole surface and let it dry, I then began tearing off small pieces of my tissue paper. By the way, with this tissue paper, I don't want any hard ends in the center, so I tore these hard edges off and I put them in a plastic bag so that I could use them around the edges of this paper mache piece. I'll show you that as we go along. I also then tore the rest of the tissue paper up and put that aside in a different area away from those straight hard edges in the plastic bag. And the tissue paper that I'm using says that it's mulberry tissue paper, so that just means if you look closely you can see that there are some strands in here of what look like string. It's actually just reinforced paper. But I did want to show you a little trick so that you could make it look like you have your own mulberry paper. And mulberry paper would be perfect to use on this project if you have it. And by the way, another reason that I'm doing this is because the paper mache surface is rough. It's not very smooth. So when you work with mulberry paper or this tissue paper that has the string underneath it, it looks very natural and organic. Whether you use the glitter or not, it's just going to look, it's going to have a little bit more texture to it. I took a whole bunch of string at once off of the spool. I ran it through the paint just to thicken it up and give it a little bit more width. And then I put that aside to dry, and when that was all dry, then I cut these strings up into little strands of maybe 2 or 3 inches long. Now while that was drying, I took some paint and sprayed it. Now this is iridescent paint, and what I did was I mixed it with water and put it into a little sprayer and spritzed my papers. I then took some of the Dilutions ink. Now you want to make sure whatever you're using, it says that it is waterproof, because when we put decoupage glue over it, we don't want it to smear or disappear. So I took something from the line called Dilutions ink, and you can see that I have the cut up string in there. And I just very lightly spritzed over this tissue paper and moved it all around. Now I loved that movie Frozen, and I watch it a couple of times here and there, and the colors in it are just beautiful. So I had a picture of one of my favorite scenes out of Frozen in front of me that inspired my colors. So I was going for an icy winter blue. And even though this color looks a little bit intense right now, we are going to be layering these papers, so you can kind of mute these as much as you want. I also used a little bit of Martha Stewart's Pearl Lavender paint. And because I did not want to dilute this color at all, I just painted a whole sheet of this tissue paper with the pearl paint and let it dry. And I added some iridescent paint over that just to lighten it up and give it a little glimmer. I also used some of these Pearl X powders. And you don't have to do every single step that I'm doing here. I just kept trying to go with shimmer and glimmer and shine and icy. I needed the lavender in there a little bit, just a tiny bit to warm it up, but some blues, some whites, some silvers. So I just played around with this, and it's a good idea to keep a picture in front of you for inspiration. Use that as you can look at it and say, you know what, I'm missing a little pink, I need a little more blue, or depending on your color scheme, it really helps you to keep referring back to that. Honestly, it's also a really nice feeling. When you're doing this, you feel like an artist because you just let all of your creativity come out and throw in there whatever you want, whatever makes you happy, what colors, what finishes. So once I'm done with all of this, I put this aside to dry, and then I tore all of these papers up, and now we can begin to decoupage. So here's all of the string that I took and cut up. I then put my napkin decoupage glue in a container right next to me, and I took a brush, and what I did was I started to pick up pieces of the paper first, and I added that. There's really no order to this. You can put the string down, then the paper. You can put the paper, then the string. You can alternate, because what I did was I just kept taking, now this was the paper that I sprayed. It's a little too vivid for me, so I'm going to cover it up with a piece of the plain tissue paper. And now I'm going to take a piece of the string and lay that down and decoupage it down. If you have trouble getting this to stick, you can just put another piece of paper over it pretty quickly, because we're going to be covering up all of the string anyway. And sometimes as I went along, I still used the Pearl X powder and shook it over certain areas, because this powder has a whole lot of glimmer and shine to it, and it works perfectly with the decoupage glue. You can see that there's a little bit of an iridescence right there along the nose. And then I just kept layering the paper, the string. I would alternate the colors, and I used those straight edges along the side. By the way, I did the same thing here. I alternated the colors. Some of the sheets had colors on them, some were white, and you just keep overlapping anyway, so it really all just blends together. And you can see how the string is really starting to show up on the surface of this. And then we add some paper over that. By the way, I keep flipping this because there's a little iridescence on this, and I want to make sure I'm getting the right side. But do you see how the string comes right on through? So I just add some texture, and I'm muting that blue color underneath it a little bit. And I just continue to layer the paper and the string and the paper and the string, sometimes adding a little bit of the Pearl X powder, sometimes adding a little of the iridescent paint. And I did this over the whole surface. By the way, I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but when you put the Martha Stewart tissue paper, or the tissue paper that you painted with the Martha Stewart Pearl Finish paint, the decoupage glue doesn't sink right through the paper, so you have to make sure you use a little bit of extra decoupage glue underneath, and make sure, of course, the pearl finish is facing up. Now, do you ever work on a project and as you're going along, like right now as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, oh, this looks like a mess. But you just kind of keep going until you're satisfied. Just keep adding the right colors. You can layer a whole lot on here. It will take a little bit of a while to dry, but that's okay. Just keep layering, adding the colors. Look back at your original picture, see what it is you think you need or what you're missing. And you've got to let it dry too to see how it looks, because everything will lighten up a little bit then too. So I'm just going to keep finishing this, layering it until I get to a point where I really like it. I'm going to put it aside to dry, and then I'm going to move on to the next step. And here's how the project looks. Now, I'm not finished, but it is dry. And now I'm going to add, of course, the glitter all over this. And I'm using the triple thick glaze. You can see I'm ready to get rid of this bottle or this jar. And I'm going to just work in sections. I also have glitter in quite a few shades of blue, of lavender, of white. I think I may have a little bit of silver in there. So what I'm doing is I'm working in sections, and I am adding the glitter on this. And I'm using chunky glitter. I'm also using fine glitter. Now, this is another thing where you can go as heavy as you want or as light as you want. you guys that know me know that I love my glitter, and I know some of you out there do too. So I'm going to go very heavy on the glitter and go all around this piece with the triple thick and the glitter and cover it all up, and then we'll be all done, and I'll show you how this looks in the Christmas lights and in the daylight. Well, I don't think I mentioned, when you're working around these antlers here, you can actually paint that tissue paper on with a paintbrush. You can wrap it around and paint it. It is so pliable and easy to use that you just use smaller pieces around here and just wrap it around with the decoupage glue, and it's just like you're painting. Now that everything is dry, I'm going to show you how this looks behind the Christmas light. So this is the Christmas tree. If I were to hang this back here during the night, you could definitely look at all of that sparkle and glimmer. It has to do with the different colors and the different sizes of the glitter, and you can see that I loaded this up with glitter, but I'll show you how it looks in the daylight too. So here it is in the daylight with the morning sun, and you can even see in a couple of areas, a couple of the pictures rather, sometimes it looks lavender, sometimes it looks silver, in here it looks blue. So there's a whole lot going on with this piece, and depending on the time of the day and where you hang this, you can get a whole bunch of different colors out of this. So I hope you guys were happy with this video. I will be putting another one out next week. YouTube has really been helping the creators out a lot. They're trying to work with us to get things back to normal. And I'm going to leave you with a few shots around my yard and our home, because we got a lovely snowfall while I was working on this, and it really puts you in the mood to get some nice wintry crafting done. And thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you for sticking with me, my friends. I will see you next week with another video. Thanks again, guys. Bye-bye.